Let's go! Woo! All right, you good? You good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, as some of you may know, a couple weekends ago, it was Pride in Amsterdam. And at the moment, I was laying on my couch, and I was just thinking to myself that I couldn't do nothing. It's Pride. I've got to do something. So I decided that I would head to this bar that I knew was having a private party. But even then, the doorman had to be strict. We heard the rules when we walked in: social distancing, and to remain seated as much as possible. But you know what? In times of crisis, beggars can't be choosers. So if celebrating Pride meant sitting there and listening to music, at least I could be thankful to live in a country where I could smoke up if I needed to. And for the record, I definitely did. Anyway, so as I'm walking into this bar, I've been to this bar before. I know what it's looked like when there's been over 100 people at this bar. But when I walked in, it was a scene that we've all kind of seen, you know? It's that a few pods of people, 2, 3, but no more than 3, a table sitting between them, and of course you have that social distancing kept in effect to make sure that everyone is spaced away. And you know what? As soon as I walked in, I was like, this bar looks like it's a Monday night, but it's not the kind of night that you want to celebrate Pride in. And I thought, this is tense, this is weird, I should just go home. But I remembered who I was when I was lying on that couch, and I said, no, I've got to do something. So I ordered a drink, and I sat down, and that's when I met Rashida. Now, Rashida is the kind of person that you want to meet at least once in your life. Because the minute that I sat down, she turned to me with her face with a big bright smile and crystals and glitter all over her face, and she invited me into a conversation about space. And I don't, yeah, someone's excited. And I don't mean like personal space, like the space we need to keep between ourselves, but as what the man suggested by cheering, like outer space. Yeah, right? She wanted to talk about outer space, she wanted to talk about space, the final frontier, she wanted to talk about live long and prosper, and you know what? With my Star Trek hat, yeah, right? So, with my Star Trek hat placed firmly on my head, I was so ready for this moment. And we began talking, and I'm telling her about like the difference between warp speed and hyperspeed, how one is actually scientific theory and the other one is a fantasy of George Lucas. And as we're having this conversation, I noticed that the bar doors have started to close. Mm-hmm. And that the music was starting to rise ever so slightly. And I recognized the song. It was, for continuity's sake, Cher. And as this very familiar song began to play, I noticed how all of these individual pods of people were starting to be affected. I noticed the little movements at first, the tapping of the toe, the nodding of the head, the rolling of the shoulders. Ooh, you like that one? Yeah, right? And it was like everyone was trying to test the boundary, but nobody wanted to get out of their seats, not at that moment. Nobody except for Rashida, who had blasted off from my side and went all the way onto the dance floor, where she landed herself, and suddenly it was like she was on an entirely different planet. And suddenly Rashida, she was feeling the music, she was waving her hair back and forth, she was completely enveloped by the sound of Cher Believe. And we were all watching her, because we thought the bouncer would come by and take Rashida and bring her back to Earth. But it never happened. And so then I started having these compromises in my head. I said to myself, well, maybe it is okay to dance as long as we keep ourselves distant. There's all that rule in effect. And if I don't do it for too long, I mean, this is Cher Believe. I want to dance. So I become the next to join her. And suddenly we're dancing and we're feeling the movement and stuff, and I have to admit, trying to keep up with Rashida, that is a task no mortal man can accomplish. And as soon as the song ended, I was sweaty in a very good way, but I'm like, I gotta get a beer and I gotta relax. So I get my beer, and I find this couch that is just kind of situated in a dark corner, and I can still see the dance floor in front of me. And by this stage, other people have begun to dance with Rashida as well. And my attention falls on one particular person. And he's this young person, he's wearing a black turtleneck, and he's twisting and contorting his body to the music. And I watch as this other person kind of drifts across the dance floor and taps this man on the shoulder. Now the man in the black turtleneck turns around and he's got this surprised look on his face. And then they hug. And at first they hug like friends who hadn't seen each other in a really long time. But then that hug lingers. And the longer it lingers, the more I can see the doubt starting to go through their mind when they ask themselves, are we holding this hug for too long? But in my mind, I'm beginning to see it like this planetary event, because I'm still hooked up on Rashida talking about space. And it seems to me like there are these two planets caught in orbit, because as one person begins to let go, the other person only hugs tighter. And it becomes this kind of dance, this pushing and this pulling, this pushing and pulling, until they become this planet. Two systems together. And now they're just swaying. They're swaying together and they don't even hear the music around them anymore. And it's like these two planets that have come together in this space are now communicating signals off the surface of each other. And that's what I noticed. One man had then sent a thumb onto the arm of the other. And as though he wanted to explore that terrain, he began to rub his thumb up and down the arm. And then that caress grew into a full hand up and down the arm. And then these two planetary people hugged again. Only this time, there was no doubt. They hugged each other as tight as they can, as though I was witnessing this galactic event of two planets smashing together to make one giant super planet. Now, these are people, so of course they don't fuse together. And instead, they move back to that swaying motion as before, swaying together. Only this time, their lips align and they kiss. Now, it's at this moment that I began to feel a little bit intrusive because I've been staring at them for quite some time. And in my mind, if they turned around and saw me with inspiration in my eyes, I would have to explain to them that I'm like this astronaut in this space station, and I'm looking at these planets, and I don't think it would suffice as an excuse. So I kind of just got up from the couch and went back towards the dance floor. But as I was walking, I had this thought in the back of my head. When was the last time that I have been touched like that? How long had I just been this empty vessel drifting through this space that we created together with only life support to sustain me? And that's when I saw Rashida again. Her eyes bright, full of stars, the bar lights reflecting off the griddles and sparkles on her face, and she opened up her arms. It's that moment that I knew it didn't matter how much space we had between ourselves. There was always this power, this gravity, this idea that we need to touch that'll bring us together again.